Perfect. All right, well, thank you everybody for joining us today. As Brooke mentioned, my name is Jennifer Sansky, and I'm going to be presenting a webinar and demo on NetSuite's demand planning today. I'd like to begin by briefly speaking about NetSuite overall and just go through a couple very quick slides, and then we'll jump right into the system. So just a little bit about NetSuite. It is a fully integrated cloud ERP solution that gives you that real-time visibility across your entire business. We like to say the 360 view around here a lot. NetSuite allows companies to store all of their business information in one location, and with the relationship database structure that it holds, it allows the views of your overall process with your ability to easily generate dashboards, reports, and searches. Because it's a cloud solution, it saves that hassle of maintenance and consistent integrations, unless you, of course, need them from outside, and it's also easily and quickly accessible from any web browser. It was founded in 1998 and was the first cloud ERP, which means that it has been around for a while and has been able to work out and work on continuing enhancements all around, just making it a better experience for us as users. NetSuite is a single data source. So as a company, there is one software that can house all of the aspects of your business. This really does make analytics much easier, and less software again means that less upkeep, less integration, and less to troubleshoot. NetSuite is configurable and highly customizable, and it can ensure that it fits your business needs right down to even the terminology. It is a SaaS model in this particular situation, that is software as a service, hosted over the internet, meaning that you can really log in from anywhere. That relationship database structure that I mentioned earlier does incorporate unique tables throughout NetSuite, and then it defines those tables with unique lines of information and relates them together by their related fields. This is really just a very efficient way to store the data and make sure it can pull it from anywhere. The forms in NetSuite, again, are also highly customizable, which ensures that your users don't have to fill out a form that's very long and detailed when they only need certain fields. You can completely make that specific to your needs. Okay, so a brief overview about the demo we're about to go in and see together. We're going to do some basic item setup. We're just going to view what's how you set the items up and where you go to for that information. I'm going to take a little peek at a couple dashboards to start off and get excited. And then we'll go into generating manual and allowing the system to create your demand plan. We're then going to look at, again, a little bit of the analytics on the demand planning side. We'll then jump into supply planning as well. So we're going to take it from that demand plan to go ahead and supply the materials we need from POs or work orders. Again, we'll take a quick peek at an analytics behind that. And then we're going to go ahead and even order our items that we needed from our demand plan that our supply plan generated. So lots of good stuff we're going to embark on. I'll now just go ahead and get into our system. So for today's demo, you can see in the top right corner, I am logged in as Edgar. As Edgar, I'm going into the role of the U.S. Purchasing and Inventory Manager. So do note that the things that we're seeing on here are based on the Purchasing and Inventory Manager role that is set up in this demo environment. Again, it is completely up to you all as users or as a business to determine what security these roles will allow for your users to have. So as we do know, NetSuite is going to show us that real-time information as we're going to look at our dashboards real quick here in the Purchasing and Inventory Manager role. We'll just give them a quick peek to find out exactly what we can do on our dashboards to make the day-to-day job as a Purchasing and Inventory Manager a lot easier. So the first thing I want to point out is up at the top, we of course have customized this role to have our center that reflects the menus that are important to us. I have my shortcuts to my new documentation up here at the top next to my help button. And again, just the things that are important to me as an inventory and purchasing person. Down on our reminders, we have again things that we would need to be notified of every day in this role. Of course, you all, I'm sure, know that you can set this up by clicking on your hamburger icon in the top right corner and clicking Setup to add new things to be reminded of. As we scroll down, let's go ahead and take a look at our KPIs. Again, these are set up by clicking on our hamburger icon and are very specific to this role. But we have things that we can assess here, like our inventory write-offs, our purchase orders received but not invoiced, our open purchase orders, and sales orders this month versus last month. If we are to go into our setup here, we're going to notice that with our KPIs, of course, under the range is where we determine the time frame of the comparison. We can put our highlighting in if we want, and of course, give it that threshold. So the next thing I want to scroll down and mention, the vendor performance scorecard. This is a fabulous tool for anybody who is in the purchasing and inventory management role. I think there's a lot of times where, as a consulting firm, we know that people don't have that view of their vendor performance, and it really can cause issues when you're not sure where to start and you are having any issues with your vendors. So this is a great tool to utilize here within this role to make sure you can look at orders, late orders perhaps, things that have an average of late days, money in vendor returns that is spent. So again, just taking a look at this particular dashlet will give us some kind of indication of where we stand with our vendors and where we need to focus. Of course, as many of your dashboards, we'll just take a look at the number of POs with our vendors. We've got our trend graph. So if I click on here, when the screen pops up real quick, I'll have the ability to flip this to different graphs that I might want to see. I've got my time frame I can also change here, so I can go on to quarterly if I wanted to. And then I can also look at the actual numbers associated in a different way. Okay, so now that we've taken a peek at some of the stuff on our dashboard, we'll go in, as I promised, and take a look at the item record. And this, again, is going to be the foundation of our demand planning. So I'm going to go into my global search right now, and I'm going to look at my office desk. We're going to pull up the actual assembly item for the office desk. When this loads, we're going to see up here at the top that we have our description information, our units of measure, costing methods, cost categories, and all of this as we scroll down is housed here in the header section and in the inventory and purchasing subtab. So again, this is an example of an assembly item. From a planning perspective, all of the information that we're going to need on this item record is going to be split between the inventory subtab and down at the bottom in our locations. One thing to note is that you have the ability within this system to use the inventory or the demand planning by location. We have that turned on for this demo instance, so we'll be able to see that all of our demand planning is by location in the system as opposed to overall. If you have multiple locations, this is a great feature to take advantage of. So we're going to see our inventory management section here. Something incredibly important to note is that we're going to have our replenishment method set at time-phased. This tells the system that we're using demand planning as opposed to advanced inventory management. So make sure that that's set if you're using your demand planning to time-phased. Once you do, let me just go ahead and put this in edit mode so I can show you what this is going to do for us. So once we have time phase selected, you're going to notice that some of the areas on the inventory management section are actually grayed out. And that's because they're used when we use advanced inventory management. The moment we select time phased and we go into demand planning, these are no longer necessary or they don't serve any good function for us anymore. So just notice that. But you can see here, you've got your transfer prices, you've got your ability to designate alternative source items as well, and define shipping methods, and so on and so forth. Coming down to the bottom, we can see that by location, so we have our locations off to the left here. You're going to see multiples. The easiest to determine for us here is the US DC and the US West DC. So we have East and West. And we can see that for each of them, we can determine the quantity on hand, committed, the on order. And again, because of that multi-location visibility, we can track costs separately by location and set specific rules for calculating demand planning. So we're going to go over some of those details now. Once we have our item completely set up, we're going to go ahead and go to our demand planning page. To get here, and this question comes up quite a bit, we have our use of our navigation portlets. So we're going to use those to navigate through the system today just for time's sake. So we're going to go ahead and go into our item demand plans. From here, there's a couple things that I want to take us into. First, I'm going to take us into the new manual item demand plan. So again, because we have this set by location in our system, we're going to choose a subsidiary and a location. And this is exactly what it says it is. This is a manual plan. We would then select an item. And once we select our item, we can actually manually enter in, let's go ahead and select the Lodge jacket. Our unit of measure from our item record will populate. Down here at the bottom, we can manually enter in our demand plan for this item. Fear not, within NetSuite, you can also import through Excel and CSV. So this is not something you need to manually enter for everything. This is available on import. But something wonderful to note here is we're looking at a monthly view. Maybe we need something more detailed. So we're going to go into our view and we're going to pick daily. We can also do weekly. But daily down to this level of detail allows us to manually enter our demand plans. You're also going to notice that you have your year, your month, and the ability to have a start and end date. So you can set this up to what works for you. Some inventory managers like to do this once a week, some once a month, some once a quarter. So this is very easily tailored to what fits your schedule and your needs. Okay, now that we've seen the manual creation, we'll go back to our home page, back to our item demand page, and click on Calculate Item Demand Plans. So this is what we're going to use to let the system generate it for us based on the criteria we set. Okay, so first here, we've got our subsidiary. Again, we'll use that US one. And we'll go ahead and choose our location. For this one, we'll choose the US East DC. And now we're going to set our projection method as linear regression. I'm going to take a moment right here, show you guys these options, and talk just for a second about what each of these mean. There are 4 methods that we can set for our projection methods. The first is the moving average. That is mathematical, and this is based on the historical duration parameter. You're going to see this over to the left. This is our historical duration parameter. So that's what it uses. And it takes the average of the demand in that historical time frame. This average is used for all of the periods in the projection, and it is a smoothing function, so that's going to remove any demand variation that we have in the system. Our linear regression, which we're going to use for this example, this is our projection method that is based, again, on that historical duration parameter we're going to set. And the system will then group the data points into weekly and monthly buckets. And a linear line will then be created based on that trend. So that's linear regression. Seasonal average, I'm going to skip over the sales forecast for just a moment. This is our other mathematical projection method within NetSuite. And this is where the system calculates a weighted index for each of the 12 months in the last year. And then finally, we have our sales forecast. And our sales forecast can be based on outstanding opportunities, sales orders, or estimates. Okay, 2 more things quickly to note about the seasonal average before we mention that sales forecast. It is an annual projection, by the way, for 12 months, the seasonal is, and it's determined by multiplying the historic annual total in the last 12 months with your expected demand change on the item record. So I know that was a mouthful, but and then those projections are calculated by using annual projections with the weighted index. So if you guys need me to put that maybe into an email after this, I will be happy to do that, just so you understand the difference between each of those projection methods you can use. Okay, so now back to our demand plan. We have selected our linear regression. And now we're going to go to our projection interval. And I'm going to go ahead and set this to weekly for our example. In the projection interval, we can make a selection to determine that period of time. But again, we're just going to go weekly. Now we're going to set our project duration over to the right-hand side and our historical analysis duration. And we're going to set these each to 20 weeks. So we're telling it to look 20 weeks out and project 20 weeks out, and we're telling it to look 20 weeks back to get the numbers to use for those projections. Okay, the sub item is a filter down here, the sub item. This is underneath our projection interval. This would be a filter that we could use to enable us to base the product category of items on something else. So since demand planning is item and location specific, you're going to see at the bottom that we have a lot going on down here. You can use these filters to narrow that down so you don't have such a busy screen if it bothers you. For this example, we're not going to use it, but we will scroll down and we're going to see all of our items that are associated with this subsidiary and this location. And we're simply going to check the items that we want to generate the plan for using linear regression. So please do notice here that you don't have to go into every single item and run it. If you're using that same projection method and your same duration parameters, you can use multiple. So I'm going to select a couple here just for fun. We'll do some, our office desk, of course, and then I'm going to do a smooth action hinge and a couple others, and I'm going to click submit. When the screen prompts up, it's telling us, it's a prompt to say there's current quantities that have been calculated in the demand plan for these items. Do you want to overwrite those ones or not? And we're going to overwrite for this example. Okay, so now that we've done that, let's go down and actually look at our office desk. So now we're looking at the weekly, because we set it to weekly, projected sales for our office desk. And this is the item forecast that we will use for our supply plan next. So we can match the supply and demand and allows us to commit to customers with our confidence. A couple things I want to point out on this screen. I'm going to go ahead and go into edit mode so you can see this better. We can, again, change that time period. So if we need this to project for an entire year, we've got it set there for 2018. If we want to take that down and look at a smaller time frame or up and look at a larger one, we easily could. Please do also note that here we can view it by day, by week, and by month. We're going to go back to weekly just for the simplicity's sake. Now that I'm in edit mode as well, I want to point out that we can go over into our quantities and override things. So maybe we have a promotion coming up that we haven't somehow reflected to the NetSuite system, or we just handle it outside of the system. Or perhaps we know that one of our competitors last minute has run out of a brand and we want to up our demand for that. You can just type in to these fields right here, and that will accommodate. You can also override an existing one, or you can take something out of here. So this does not take the ability for you as a user and as a planner to override your quantities with their demand planning system. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and save this. Now that we've looked at just the demand plan, I want to pause for just a moment. We're going to go look at a little bit of analysis before we get into the supply plan. So I'm going to go ahead and navigate to report, and I'm going to go to demand planning and item demand by item. So the item demand plan by item report displays the item demand quantity by item. We can customize this to see the quantity per location, and we can also customize the form if we would like. So down here at the bottom, I can, of course, go in and customize my report. I can add grand total rows if I want to. I can summarize I can have different unit measures if I wanted as well, and I'll just click Save for that. Same abilities you have in all of your other reports to quickly customize. The other thing, of course, that we can do is view our dates, so we can select a different date range. So if we wanted to go out like we just saw and move this to December, we can. And we can also use our quick selection, column selection here to view this by week. So again, as you're not generating those demand plans, this is really where you want to come to look at the demand breakdown if you just want an overall recap. So we'll go down and see here that here's our office desk that we just ended up running that supply for. There's that 45 I typed in to override and say maybe we have that need for more product there outside of the system. And here's the rest of the demand plan that I can look at in this weekly format throughout the year. Okay, so now let's go ahead and we have the demand plan. Let's look at the supply plan. So we could, again, generate a manual supply plan. We could choose to enter a supply plan for creating item orders that is not derived from any demand plan in the system. And that enables us to enter plans based on data and projections from external sources again. But the purpose of the supply plan is to determine the time phase supply requirements based on the calculated demand as well as the current inventory status. An item supply plan lists the purchase orders and work order requirements to ensure that the item quantity meets that expected demand. So to get there, again, I always like to use my handy dandy navigation portlet. I'm going to come down here and click on Generate Item Supply Plan. Again, this is not the manual one. This is the generated one that we will be using inside of NetSuite. Right, the first thing I'm going to do, again, I have my subsidiary selected, and now I will go ahead and select my location again. Once I do that, I'm going to set my start and end date. And you know, just for the purpose of this demo, I am going to go ahead and set this to, we'll go January of this year through October, because I really want you guys to see what the system is capable of. I'm going to go down again and I'm going to click on, we'll do the office desk. And just for fun, let's grab another one. We'll do smooth action hinge as well. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click submit here. In this case, we're going to run the supply plan for only those items, but we could have, of course, selected mark all, or we could have had something customized and broken that down more. What you're seeing right now is that up at the top, it's saying the item plans are being processed. So we could click and view our job status of that here. It's in the process of processing, and now it's complete. Once that's complete, just like we did with our demand plan, we can go in and view by each of our items. All right, let's go into our smooth action hinge. Perfect. Now, for our office desk, had we had any supply plan that needed to be run, the only difference here, it would, of course, incorporate that demand that we talked about, but because it's an assembly item that we produce in-house, it would have told us that the work orders that needed to be generated, and again, by the dates that they needed to be generated by. So what we're looking at right now is our smooth action hinge. This is a purchased item, and because it's a purchased item, we're getting that order type as the PO. When we take a closer look, it tells us the required quantities to be ordered to meet our demand, and it automatically generated planning action messages that are available if we want to put them on there. So I'm going to go ahead and show you this tab. This is our orders tab we're on. If we go to our planning messages, what we're going to notice here is it's going to tell us whatever we have. So our on hand is above our safety stock levels at the dates that these were generated. You have other options in the system for these planning messages that you can set. We have options like projected on hand will be negative. Projected on hand is below safety stock. outstanding unapproved purchase orders or planned work orders should be rescheduled due to demand changes. We can have messages like, now we will navigate to planning messages. We can have messages directing us away from here as well. So we've just seen our supply plan that was generated. We've seen how we can review that in the planning message and see over a period of time what's actually necessary. Once we save our item supply plan, now let's talk about a piece of analytics that we can actually use in the system to go look at our supply plans. So we're going to go and navigate to our gross requirements inquiry. We're going to go down to that navigation portlet, and we're going to find our gross requirements inquiry that is really based for us on the supply plan. From here, we can see what our gross requirements are. This enables us to have an overall view of the progressive supply and demand cycle by listing the quantities required, the quantities supplied on each transaction date listed, and each transaction date is listed along with the more on hand or less on hand quantity of the transaction, as well as the resulting total quantity for the item. What you're going to notice up here at the top is we have the ability to show details. And again, we have the ability to look at this by each item. So this is a great overall when you're looking at your supply, when you're planning your dates, when you're trying to make sure you're not above certain levels, or maybe you're sensing that you just need to do some analytics on your own. This is a great tool to go in and analyze. Okay, so now that we've looked at that, let's go back to our global search and let's look at one of our item records and see how this is all now going to be tied into our item record. So now I'm pulling up the office desk item record again. This is our assembly item we looked at earlier. I'm now going to navigate to my item status details tab. As I go down, I'm going to go ahead and click on my projected supply. And I'm going to notice that under my projected supply, I can now see every time a work order is projected to bring in the quantities that we needed. Under my projected demand, again, based on the things we just looked at, I can see my projected demand and I can again narrow that down by location. And planned production, we can do the same. So this is all now cozy and tucked into our item records and a great, easy place for you to go and look things up without having to go into the full analytics if you just need to look into a certain item. Okay, so now that we have that from the item record, let's go in and make some purchase orders or place some POs. We're still going to be in the role of our purchase and inventory manager. We've put our demand in. We now know what we need to supply, but now let's go ahead and see how NetSuite can help us create this. So again, we're going to go back to our home screen. We're going to navigate down to our navigation portlet and order items. Okay, and up here, we're going to select all for our locations and all for our vendors. And we're going to, again, for the purpose of this demo, change these dates here. This is our order start date and our order end date. Again, for you purchasing and inventory managers out there, this is a very easy way to tailor the system to meet your schedule. So always note these start dates and end dates that we have, as you can make those work very well for you. So you can make it work for your schedule. All right, so as we're going down, this is going to be all of the items that we need to order based on those supply plans. And again, that can be narrowed down by location if you're on a schedule to do certain locations each week, by vendor. So this is another way that people like to incorporate them all, one purchase order, including multiple items for each vendor. You've got your minimum quantity. So those vendors that require a minimum order quantity, or maybe you do to meet certain freight, you have the ability to enter that here. And once you go down to the bottom, again, just like the rest of our supply and demand planning, we have the ability to literally just click these check boxes of what we want to include. You're going to see here that my vendor is preferred and set up as a preferred vendor on my item to be Herman Miller, but that doesn't mean I can't change that. So if I had a vendor who came in and said, look, I'm willing to give you a better price, I could go ahead and select that vendor. Or maybe Herman Miller's having some stock out issues. I can quickly change that. That's a great way to determine your vendor right here on this screen. And it really is time saving to make sure you don't have to go in and generate this manually. Again, over to our right, we're going to see our quantities. So these are the proposed quantities. So just like everything else in the demand and supply center of NetSuite, we can manually override these if we need to. So we're going to select just a couple of these again. We've got our Herman Miller. We'll do a couple of those. And then maybe we'll get a Samsung in here just for fun. And we're going to click Submit. All right, again, this is telling us that it processed or it's processing. So we're going to keep refreshing. This will just take a moment until this page, here we go, we've got one in process, is complete. If I keep going, I'll see the second one is going to complete in just a moment. And now what we're seeing is the link directly to our purchase order. So let's go ahead and click on the Herman Miller one. Our approval status is at approved, but of course, to meet your business needs, you could set this up to need approval once it's generated. So once this purchase order opens in just a moment, we're going to go ahead and take a look at what the system auto-generated based on our demand, based on our supply plan, and then generated for us so we don't have to worry about it. So it's already come in at the pending receipt level because it has been approved by your supervisor. Again, this can be easily tailored to what you need. And as we go down to the bottom, it is loading those items right now that we told it to load based on our supply plan. So here you're going to see those that we checked the box on. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and save this. And as I go to my activities test as this is, or tab as this is saving, I'm going to note that I can have easily emailed this directly to my vendor from there, printed it, or sent it in those ways. If I do email it, like everything in NetSuite, I would then have an audit record of this, of course. So always our recommendation to do that. Okay, so our next step would generally be to just go ahead and receive our item. And once we do that, again, that's all going to tie into our vendor performance scorecard. So that takes us back to the beginning of our process where you can see where that would then tie in to your vendor performance and your ability to analyze and navigate here. So with that, I hope you guys had fun today learning a little bit about how the demand planning works in there, supply planning, and of course the order items based off of that. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it back over to Brooke.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jenny. All right. Let me know when you can see my screen.
I can see you.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much. That was great. I would just want to cover a few follow-up items, and then we're going to move into our question and answer section of the webcast. Today's webcast is a part of our free ongoing educational webcast series, and our upcoming webcasts are currently listed on the screen. And if you'd like to register for any of these, they are free. You can go out to our website at getgsi.com. And also, if you'd like to sign up for our weekly emails on upcoming webcasts or a monthly newsletter, you can go to getgsi.com, go to the bottom of the screen, and click on the link for each. All right, perfect. Looks like we've got a few questions here. All right, and the first question, Jenny, is from Mark, and Mark says, How do I get the navigation portlets on my dashboard that were on the demo?
That is actually a Suite app, and it's a free one and managed. So if you want to go and download that, and then once you go into Suite Answers, if you key that in, they will help you configure them to what you need. But it really is a great shortcut path. So good question.
Okay, great. Perfect. Um, and I just want to remind everybody, if you do have any other questions, you can submit them using your GoToWebinar console. And if you had minimized it during the presentation, you can click the left-facing arrow key, and um, it'll pop back up, and then you can input your question. And it looks like that's all that we have right now. So I just want to thank you, Jennifer, for your presentation today, and everyone for their question. And as a short follow-up, we ask that you complete a short 1-minute survey when you exit, and you will be receiving an email with a link to our resource center on our website where you can access the recording from today's webcast, as well as a copy of the presentation. And after today's webcast, we will do the drawing for the $25 Amazon gift card, and anyone that attended the entire webcast and completes the survey will be eligible, and we will notify the winner. Thank you everybody again, and you too, Jennifer, and we hope that you have a great day.
Thank you all, and don't forget to register. Those gift cards are nice. Have a great day, guys. Bye.
Bye.